So, in today's session, we're going to have a look at an introduction to nutrition. My name is Laura Hughes, and I'm the Veterinary Nurse Development Manager at Purina. Before we dive headfirst into the nutrition part of this training, I'd just like to touch a little bit on how the consumer thinks when they are purchasing a product. We often come in and discuss nutrition, and more nutrition, and we forget that you are the ones that are actually doing the recommendation to clients. Did you know that 85% of customers want a specific recommendation, but actually only 15% of customers perceive that they get one? So if I give you a bit of an analogy, if I need to go in and buy some cough medicine for my daughter, I will go into the pharmacist and I will have a look on the shelf, and I'll be inundated with lots of different products staring back at me. And actually, in this situation, what I need is a bit of help from the shop assistant or the pharmacist to recommend the correct one based on the type of cough that she has. And this is where your clients are at. They may walk into your practice possibly feeling a little bit anxious as they don't know which product would be best for their pet. They need your help in recommending the correct product for their pet's needs. And it's also really important to remember that before you make any kind of recommendation, you need to ask questions. I always say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we speak. Just like that pharmacist was going on to ask me questions like, is it a dry cough? Is it a wet cough? How old is your daughter, etc. You need to think about asking your clients, like, how old is your pet? What food are they currently on? What breed are they? How active are they? Does your dog have any skin or joint issues? And actually, from these questions and based on the answers, you can then make a very specific recommendation. It's not about offering the cheapest product first, it's about offering them the value. It's also important to understand why a client is in your practice. Generally, clients are in your practice because they want a product, so they need to buy some food for their pet. They need the information, so maybe they're getting a new puppy or a new animal coming into their home and they want to know about reputable breeders. They may want to solve a problem, so their dog is sick or showing signs of being sick or just doesn't look well, or is there something going on with it? Again, from this understanding, you will find it much easier to make that specific recommendation. So I hope this has helped a little in terms of understanding your customers and how they are working, but also how to help make a perfect recommendation. So let's jump into the nutrition side of things. So in this session, what we're going to cover is understanding digestion, understanding the major nutrients, and then the additional nutrients. So let's get started with understanding digestion. So let's think of who we are selling this food to. So dogs, they're not wolves. They have been domesticated descendants with additional genes, meaning that they can readily digest carbs, meaning they are omnivores. This means that they can survive without meat, however, they will not thrive on solely a vegetarian or vegan diet. Cats are not small dogs. They are true carnivores. And what that means is they cannot survive without meat within their diet. The difference between those affects the behaviours of both species. So if you think about dogs, dogs will often exercise for prolonged periods, where cats are often short bursts. So a good burst for a cat may only be a couple of minutes and then they will rest. The dogs will hunt for longer and often eat a larger meal, but cats are what we call ambush hunters and often eat little and often. Let's not forget, cats are not small dogs. They need specific requirements and have not evolved like dogs through domestication. They must be fed a balanced diet with the main ingredient as protein. They cannot be vegetarian or vegan, they would not survive, and they need the essential amino acids that are coming from meat proteins. So I did want to do a pin and organ on the dog game here, so apologies the fact that this is a webinar and that doesn't allow us to make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more interactive. So you may not have ever thought about how the digestive system works, but looking at the cat or dog as a whole, you can see that the whole process of what happens to the food on its way through. So in the mouth, the food is broken down into smaller chunks, and some digestive juices start to work on the digestive processing of those nutrients. It then goes into the esophagus. So this is simply a transport tube. The muscle of the esophagus contracts and relaxes, allowing the food to pass into the stomach. So the stomach, I call this a bit like a washing machine. So the food is mixed all around with all of the acids and enzymes in the stomach to start that primary digestion of protein and fat. The liver and the pancreas also add their part to help digestion. We've then got the small intestine. So the small intestine is the main hub of nutrient absorption. So large food molecules are broken down into smaller nutrients or units that are then passed into the bloodstream. And then you've got the large intestine. This is the hub of water absorption, and it's the preparation for any waste product to then be excreted. So when we've briefly touched on the liver and the pancreas, but the liver and the pancreas also play a role in digestion. So the liver produces bile acids that help to digest fat, and the pancreas produces enzymes that are helping with digestion processes as well. So we'll talk more about gut health, but digestion is the process of the nutrients from the ingredients. So this process breaks them down into smaller pieces in which the body can use them. So those smaller pieces are then absorbed through the intestinal wall and into the blood or lymphatic stream. And this is where they're transported off to the other parts of the body. So I think of it a bit like a sorting system. So within the large intestines live billions, and I'm going to say that again, billions of bacteria. So a really fun but slightly horrible fact is that our bodies, like dogs and cats, actually contain more bacteria cells than human cells. So within the large intestines, these bugs live here all the time, and there is a balance of both good and bad. We can never get rid of the bad bugs, and often they will remain unharmful unless they get out of hand. The good bugs keep us healthy, but when we say we have a belly bug, we often refer to the imbalance, or that there's a greater load of the bad bugs making us poorly, and we all know what that can look like. It's worth noting that the quality of the ingredients does directly affect the level of digestibility. So take two bits of a cow as an example. The hide, which we will use to make into shoes, and the muscle, which we will make into steaks. We could eat both if we had to, but we would obviously get more nutrients from the steak as it's more digestible. Good digestion will mean good poos. Both things we will look at in more detail as we go through this session. But as you can see, high quality ingredients will support high digestibility of the product, which also means that you've got great nutrient quality, which then supports good nutrient absorption. This is then going to help healthy digestion and a good fecal quality. So these are really important factors when we're looking at the nutrients in our pet foods. So if we put in low quality ingredients, they are harder to digest and less of them is absorbed. The pet then gets less nutrients from the food, and more will remain in the guts and will then be removed as waste. The result of this is the pet is not thriving and will most likely have an unsatisfactory output, and that's looking at both the quantity and the quality of the motions that are being produced. If you refer to our fecal scoring charts, you will remember we are looking for the ideal poo to be a number 2. And so actually, if you've got a dog that's on a poorly digestible diet, you may find that you are getting fecal scores of 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now let's look at the main nutrients and what their job is. So there are 6 basic nutrients that we're going to look at and go through in this session today. The first one is protein, then we've got carbohydrates, and then we've got fats. And these are what we call our energy producing nutrients. So our animals are going to be getting energy from these nutrients within the diet. So we then have our other nutrients, which are vitamins, minerals, and most importantly, and interestingly, the one that people will often forget, is water. Okay, you will probably be asked why a commercial pet food should be fed rather than a homemade diet or table scraps, or why a pet owner couldn't consider paying extra when an economy brand seems to be having very similar ingredients. So it's important to think about all pet foods contain ingredients, but ingredients are not nutrients. Ingredients are foodstuffs that may provide nutrients and energy. Nutrients are substances that are required by the body for normal body functions and to support life, such as growth and maintenance of body tissue, supporting the immune system, and providing energy. So, now we go on to essential and non-essential nutrients. So essential nutrients cannot be made by the body and must be included in the diet. Examples are some of the building blocks of carbohydrates, proteins and fats, certain vitamins and mineral and water. And then you've got your non-essential nutrients. So non-essential nutrients are required by the body but can be made up from other nutrients. They are in general not in the diet. Examples of this are vitamin K, dietary fibre, and certain amino acids and fatty acids. So when we look at nutrient requirements, what do we mean by that? So a nutrient requirement is the quantity of a nutrient that must be supplied to an animal in order to satisfy its metabolic needs. It is vital that a pet has optimal amounts of nutrients, and providing a pet with too many nutrients also has a negative impact to their health as much as providing them with too little of those nutrients. A historic example may be looking at calcium levels in large or giant breed dogs. Okay, so now let's go into our main nutrients. So first of all, we're going to look at protein. So protein is made up of amino acids. There are 23 amino acids in total. 10 of them are essential in dogs and 11 of them are essential in cats. So the same ones as dogs, plus the addition of taurine. So what are they needed for? So they're needed for things like repairing tissues, supporting immune function and energy. And actually hair growth and repair can utilise up to 30% of the daily protein intake, and increasing dietary protein can really improve coat quality. So fun fact, 95% of every hair on a pet's coat is made up of protein, and this is where you can see the link between protein and skin, or protein quantity and quality, and skin support. So what are the types of proteins that you might get within a pet food? So you'll split it into 2 camps. You'll have your animal-based proteins, which is going to be things like meat, fish, egg. And then you're going to have your vegetable-based proteins, so things like corn, rice, maize, and maybe pea. So when we look at proteins, these can then be further assessed in relation to their quality, or biological value is another term that may be used. So if you look at this chart, what you can see is that egg has the highest value versus corn that has the lowest value. And this correlates to the amino acid content of those sources. So if you remember back to the previous slide, we talked about dogs and cats' needs in relation to amino acids and the fact that there are 11 essential amino acids for a cat and 10 essential amino acids for a dog. And actually the chart there is showing that those ingredients with higher biological value have more of those amino acids in there. So when we compare it to adults, there are different stages that animals will need different amounts of protein within their diet. So as an example, puppies require 66% more protein than adults, and adult cats require 44% more protein. When you think about most cats, their energy supply comes from protein, and that's then broken down by the liver. If the liver enzymes work at a fixed rate, which can't be lowered, and therefore if you're not providing sufficient protein in the diet, the cat will start to break down its own body's protein to meet its energy requirements, and that's when you may start to see things like muscle loss. When we look at carbohydrates, these are the main energy source for dogs, with glucose being the primary source used by most cells. Dietary fibre can also benefit digestive health and promote normal gut motility. It's useful for some fibre-responsive conditions such as constipation, obesity and hair balls. So when we look at carbohydrates, they're split into two groups, digestible carbohydrates and non-digestible carbohydrates. So if we look at digestible carbohydrates first, these are your simple sugars, and these are digested and absorbed within the small intestines. We then go on to look at your non-digestible carbohydrates. So these are your dietary fibres that cannot be broken down into simple sugars for absorption within the small intestines. These can be further split into soluble and insoluble fibres. So soluble fibres are fermented in the large intestine to produce short-chain fatty acids, and many soluble fibres are prebiotics, and that's something that feeds the good bacteria in the guts and helps with gut balance. And then you have insoluble fibres. So insoluble fibres are non-fermentable, and they are things like cellulose that pass through the intestines without being digested. But what they do is help to promote that feeling of fullness or satiety, as it's often referred, and also supporting good stool quality. So now we'll look at our sources of carbohydrates. So these are either our starches, so cereals and vegetables, or they will be fibres such as beet pulp, chicory and whole grain. So now let's look at fats. So when we look at the functions of fat, so fat is a source of energy. It's the most calorie dense nutrient. It is a source of essential fatty acids. It's a source of those fat soluble vitamins, and it enhances the palatability of diets. When we look at fats, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are classed as essential. So when we look at omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids are a fantastic natural anti-inflammatory, and omega-6 fatty acids, they help with the skin barrier and water balance. So where are these fats coming from? So we have animal fats, so they might be coming from things like fish, beef, lamb or poultry fats. And then we have our oils coming from things like corn, sunflower or maybe coconut oil. So now let's look at the other nutrients. So vitamins. Vitamins do not provide energy but are essential for the health of the pet. They support energy metabolism, healthy bones, vision and antioxidants. The body cannot produce them all. Cats cannot produce vitamin A and will suffer serious deficiencies causing deformities of the spine without it. When you look at vitamins, you can also split them into two groups. You have your water-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins B and vitamin C, and you have your fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E and K. When you look at the water-soluble vitamins, these cannot be toxic if they're given in excess because the excess would just be excreted within the urine. But it's important to note, if you gave too much of the fat-soluble vitamins, that could be toxic because it won't be excreted as excess. It's particularly important to think about this when we're thinking about nutrient balance for cats. So let's go into the specifics. So the specifics, vitamin A will help with vision. Vitamin E and vitamin C are antioxidants, so they help to mop up free radicals that would otherwise be causing damage to the cells. Vitamin A and D are important for bone growth and maintenance, and vitamin B helps with energy metabolism. So let's have a look at minerals. So minerals are vital in the balance of the body's functions. They are required for growth and development, maintenance, and are therefore essential to life. A small insufficiency over a period of time can have significant long-term effects. An example being the calcium-phosphorus ratio. This needs to be perfectly balanced for bone growth and development because an imbalance could lead to brittle or bendy bones. Feeding complete, balanced, reputable diets is the best way to ensure the correct balance of minerals within the diet. Now, one thing I will just note, when you look at the composition on a label or on the packaging, where it will talk about it might refer to it as composition or analytical constituents, you may see minerals being referred to as ash. That's a term that's used within the pet food industry, and it just means the mineral content that remains if everything else was burnt off. Energy is not a nutrient in itself, but is the second most important consideration after water. Inadequate energy intake will lead to poor growth or loss of body fat or lean body tissue. Energy is required for so many things: movement and activity, maintenance of body temperature, both during hot and cold conditions, as well as some body processes such as growth. Energy is measured in calories, and calories are the units of measure that we use to quantify how much energy is locked in food. So when we look at the energy producing nutrients, there are three of them. We've got fat, that provides approximately 8.5 calories per gram. We've got carbohydrates that provide approximately 3.5 calories per gram. And we've got protein that provides also 3.5 calories per gram. Now, within different species, there are preferred energy sources. So humans prefer to get their energy from carbohydrates, dogs prefer to get their energy from fat, and cats prefer to get their energy from protein. So let's just have a chat about antioxidants. So antioxidants are often referred to as the tidy up crew. They mop up any free radicals in the body. So if you think about a face cream, I'm getting a bit older, and actually when I'm looking at my face cream, I might start to think about things that are going to help with the aging process that I'm going through and support my skin. And we will often think about that from the inside of our bodies as well. So if you've got a bit of a cold, you might think about having an orange or a glass of orange juice as some vitamin C. So these antioxidants can be really powerful in supporting these processes. They are naturally found or can be added to the food. Vitamin C is an antioxidant which supports the body fighting free radicals and can serve as a preservative within the food as well. Okay, so now we're going to do a pop quiz. So the nice thing is, because this is a recording, We will ask the question and then there will be a brief moment of time before the answer comes up on screen. So hopefully you're able to guess the answers correctly. So what are the 3 major nutrients found in pet food? They are proteins, carbohydrates and fats. Name one source of animal fat. So that could be something like fish oils. Give 2 examples of which pets would benefit from a higher protein diet. So that could be your puppies and kittens, your senior animals where you're trying to support their muscle mass or they're losing weight as they get that little bit more older, your dogs that are working, or even dogs that are overweight. Give 1 example of what nutrients are needed for. So they're needed for so many things. So growth and maintenance of body tissues, metabolism, energy, and to support the immune system. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If you have any questions or you would like to arrange further training sessions to support nutrition within your practice, please email the address on screen, which is vettechline@purina.nestle.com. We will then put you in touch with your local veterinary nutrition partner who can support you and your practice further. Thank you so much for your time and attention.